The warning signs are usually there, but true love is worth the risk. Not always. Getting drunk is sometimes referred to as feeling no pain. And Wayne Robinson wasn't feeling any pain after a drunken binge with a woman he had been sleeping with, Dominique Fisher. Honestly, he probably wished he had been feeling pain, because when he passed out drunk the final night of their bender, Dominique began carving her name into his flesh with a knife. But she didn't stop there. She continued to cut up her lover with other senseless designs. When he awoke, he was covered in blood and immediately went to police. Dominique was found guilty of unlawful wounding. People like to think that celebrities live carefree lives. This wasn't the case for Sons of Anarchy actor Dimitri Diatchenko, who had split from his girlfriend but continued living with her for some time as her roommate. Eventually, his ex-girlfriend believed it was time that they no longer lived together, and Dimitri was upset by this. As retaliation, Dimitri took his ex's pet rabbit one day while she was gone and killed it, skinned it, cooked it, and ate portions of it, all while sending step-by-step pictures to her phone of the entire process. When she returned home, he threatened to do the same to her. Dimitri denies allegations and claims that the rabbit is fine and it was an empty threat, but he has been unable to produce the rabbit to prove his words true. He pled not guilty to the charges. The internet can be a pretty addicting thing. For one man named Jiang Ming, the internet consumed just about every waking moment of his life. This was frustrating for his wife, as the two had just had a newborn baby, and he was reluctant to help take care of the child. If she wouldn't allow him online at home, he'd sneak out of the house to internet cafes. One day, while at home using the computer, Jiang felt his hands suddenly go numb, and the mouse stopped moving. He looked down in shock to see his wife had cut his right hand clean off, and blood was pouring out freely onto the desk. Surprisingly, the man pleaded for her release in court, claiming that the entire act was his fault. Relationships can go south for many reasons. For Marcin Kasprzak, it was between an abundance of steroids and obsessive bodybuilding. His girlfriend, who had been living with him and his family, claimed that Marcin suddenly just stopped wanting to be with her. She continued to live with him and his parents despite Marcin being against the idea. One day, Marcin claimed that he wanted to go shopping with her. As she got ready, he struck her with a 300,000-volt stun gun and bound and gagged her. He forced her into a cardboard box and drove her out into the woods. He dragged her out with the assistance of a friend and buried her alive in a shallow grave, resting a 90-pound branch on top afterwards. Using the engagement ring he had given her, she cut herself free from her binds after an hour inside the box and managed to escape before she suffocated. Marcin was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Being denied a marriage proposal can be crushing. One Russian woman felt such a way when her boyfriend refused to take her hand in marriage. The two had been together for about 2 years, and while she wanted to take things to the next level, he wanted to go back to his previous partner and their child. His now ex-girlfriend recommended a farewell dinner, got the man drunk, and once he passed out, tied firecrackers to his genitals and lit them. The man's genitals were blown off. It is unknown as to whether or not the man survived. Some people just refuse to get their lives together. Raul Olvera Gomez was living with Mariana Padilla and her family. Mariana's mother considered Raul a deadbeat, as he was unemployed and not going to school. She tried forcing Raul out of the house a number of times and was on the brink of being victorious. Mariana was preparing to leave Raul, but Raul had other plans in mind. One night, he made a call to his brother and warned him of his plan. There was no time to react, unfortunately. It's believed in less than a minute, he stormed into Mariana's home and gunned down her and her mother and younger brother before turning the gun on himself. Making out can be a pleasurable experience, but it's a pretty dirty process. But for Mark Coggill, it had different risks. Tracy Davies and Mark Coggill were celebrating Mark's 45th birthday. After returning home from drinks, Tracy began to grow upset. She had wanted to have a baby, but she wasn't pregnant. Mark did what any loving man would do and moved in to comfort her. The two started kissing, and Tracy asked Mark to use a bit of tongue. When he obliged, she clamped down on it with her teeth and ripped about a third of his tongue right out of his mouth. Horrified but still drunk, Mark eventually calmed down and went to rest, hoping the pain would wear off. He was awoken by Tracy biting his elbow. The police were called, and Tracy had the piece of tongue ready for them in a plastic bag. She was in disbelief when the police began arresting her. Due to risk of infection, the tongue could not be stitched together again. Some people are just heartless. Just a week after Caitlin Hare wrote how much she loved her boyfriend William Daunt on Facebook, the two had an argument after Caitlin had to leave a party to pick him up from work. William claimed that Caitlin kicked him in the groin once they got home, and for that he horrifically murdered her. From slamming her head into the floor to punching her face, he eventually choked her to death. He took a moment to think and decided to cut her into pieces and hide her body parts in trash bags. He got a restful night's sleep, woke up and realized that the bags may be a bit too obvious, so he took an X-Acto blade and skinned her flesh and ripped away her muscles and sawed through her bones with an electric saw. He confessed to police without any remorse, claiming he cut her up like a pot roast. He was sentenced to life in prison. A number of the jury members had to receive counseling after viewing the evidence. A mother should be a protector for her child, but sadly, this isn't always the case. Audie Sanchez and Scott Buchholz were new parents with their 3.5-week-old baby, Scotty. Audie had trouble delivering the baby and was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis on top of having schizophrenia. She denied medication at one point and became less stable. Audie and Scott lived apart for a time, and one day while Audie was visiting Scott's parents' house to see the baby, Scott and Audie got into an argument, which ended with Audie taking the baby and running outside into her car and speeding off. Police were called, but they treated it simply as a disturbance. The next day, baby Scotty was found dead. Audie was hysterical, claiming the devil made her kill her baby. She not only killed Scotty, however, but mutilated him and cannibalized parts of the newborn's body and organs. She was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Her husband, however, still wanted her to receive the death penalty. Some people should never be allowed to walk free. Every now and again, a devious criminal slips through a crack in the legal system and ends up walking out of jail. Joseph Oberhansley was one such man, and perhaps one of the worst. In 1998, he murdered a previous girlfriend and attempted to murder his own mother. He then shot himself in the head, yet miraculously and unfortunately survived. Years later, walking free still, even after being arrested again, this time for criminal recklessness after a police chase, he met Tammy Jo Blanton. The two soon ended up having problems and separated themselves. Police received a call from Tammy one morning at 3 a.m. Tammy said Joseph was there and wouldn't leave. Police arrived and forced Joseph to leave, but it was far from over. About 7 hours later, Tammy didn't show up for work, and her coworkers called police to perform a welfare check on her. When they arrived at Tammy's residence, they were horrified to find her brutally murdered in her bathroom. Joseph was apprehended and confessed to stabbing her to death. He then used an electric jigsaw to open her up and cooked and ate parts of her brain, heart, and lungs. Joseph was sentenced to death. That's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I wish you the best of luck in your love life. I'll see you next Wednesday. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next episode of Seriously Strange. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to thumbs up and comment below. Thanks for watching.